Hi guys, Han here, and today I'm going to be showing you how I made this BTS inspired rug. As I'm sure many of you know, fan art is a big part of stan culture, and as a creative person myself, I've also made fan art in the past, but I've always wanted to do something just a little bit different from everybody else, you know? So when I came across the rug making trend on TikTok, I thought, oh my gosh, this is it. This is something so cool and so different from what everybody else does. And I was like, I can do that. So I took inspiration from the original TinyTAN purple well doll, and I turned it into this rug. This video is going to be me showing you how I made this rug, and it's going to be the first installment of a new series on my channel called HANDiY, where I do small DIY products with you guys. So without further ado, let's go! So when it came down to the design, I really wanted a rug to go next to my bed in my bedroom, and since my room is based on Soju and Magic Shop as the main themes, I thought this little purple guy would be the perfect addition, you know? So I used the original doll as my inspiration. Using the doll as a basis, I drew out the design I wanted on my iPad. Now, if you look up rug making tutorials on YouTube or TikTok, you'll see that most people use something called a tufting gun. The thing is, those are really expensive, and I wasn't really sure that I wanted to invest $300 into this mini project that might not even come out well since it's my first time, right? So I looked up an alternative method and I ended up coming across something called punch needle. It's a lot cheaper, it's a lot easier, the tools are inexpensive, and I figured this would be a better route to go, even though it is a little bit more time consuming. Not only that, I was able to buy a couple of practice kits just so I could get a hand of the technique before I actually started making my rug. So now I had my design, the next thing I had to do was get the materials I need to actually make the rug. The first thing I ended up needing was a frame, and I just brought the biggest canvas I could find, which was 70 by 70 centimeters, and cut out the canvas, and there you had a perfect frame. You also need the base for your rug, which is I chose monk's cloth, which is the most common one you'll find. It's the same fabric that's used for cross stitching if you ever did that in primary school, and it's relatively inexpensive. Of course, you also need the coloured yarns that you're going to use for the colours of your rug. I recommend yarns that are 3 to 5 millimeters wide as opposed to 2 millimeters, which is what I had, because then you have to double up the yarn and it takes a lot more yarn and a lot more time. And the last two things I got were a razor to cut the loops, because I really wanted what is called a cut pile rug, not a loop pile rug, even though with the punch needle you automatically get loops. And I also got spray adhesive to secure the back and some backing fabric. In total, all these materials cost me just under $100, which isn't exactly cheap, but considering it's to make a custom rug and a lot of these materials are reusable, it was worth it in my personal opinion, and I definitely will be making more rugs, so. And it's a lot cheaper than a tufting gun. Once I had all my materials, it was finally time to get punching. I started by tracing out my design onto my month cloth, and I did this using the grid method, where you basically draw a grid on your original design and then draw a grid on your fabric, the size that you want it, and then you copy each square. It's a lot easier than like using a projector, well, it's not a lot easier, but it's a lot cheaper than using a projector or like tracing it off your screen and stuff like that. So I'm a cheapskate, that's the method that worked for me, and it worked fine. And then from there, I just got to punching. I started with the smaller details first, like the eyes and the mouth and things like that, and then I did the big sections afterwards.
Okay, so I'm about at the halfway mark of this process. Oh, kind of, I know there's a lot left.
And I know what you guys are thinking, this must have taken forever, and yeah, it kind of did. In all honesty, I did this over like multiple days, but I think in total it would have taken me roughly about 12 hours to punch this entire thing. Mind you, I do feel like it would have been a lot faster if I had a tufting gun, like maximum 2 hours and I would have finished. And that's only because there's so many small details and different colours that go into the design. That being said, just because it was a long process doesn't mean it was unpleasant. I actually found it quite therapeutic, and because punch needle is so easy, it's something you can do while you're doing something else, like watching a movie or just talking with friends, you know? So it wasn't too bad, and I actually quite enjoyed it. It was a really nice stress reliever for me after work as well in the evenings. For me, the real tedious part was cutting the loops. Oh my goodness. Guys, if you're going to do this with punch needle and you want a cut pile rug like I did, the best advice I can give you is do not use a human hair razor. It cannot cut through the yarn. You need a pet razor, like a dog razor or a cat razor, because they're a lot sharper, they have more blades, and they are made to go through thicker, fuller like hair, so it cuts through the yarn so much easier. I actually ended up using both in this process because I had clippers at home, and I ended up buying the pet clippers after doing some more research. I did just this bottom pick section with the human hair clippers, and it took me days, like actual days. And this purple bit at the top I did with the pet clippers, literally like 2 hours. So I highly recommend that you use the pet clippers because it will just save you so much stress. do as I say, not as I do, okay? Anyway, once all the cutting was done, we were finally getting close to the finished result. But before I show you that, I would like to interrupt this video and remind you to like this video if you like this video, and if you'd like to see more stan content from me or career related content from me, then why not become a resident of the Haniverse and click the subscribe button. After I finished trimming it with a razor, the final step that was left was to secure the backing. I used a spray adhesive, but I'm actually not sure that I would recommend this, because what I found was that for the adhesive I used, even weeks later, it was still tacky. And I was really worried that it was going to stick to the floor. And that was the reason I used the adhesive in the first place. So I think just stick to the liquid latex that everybody else uses. I think it's just easier. It dries in like 3 days and it might smell a little bit, but it'll be worth it in the end. Because I used a spray adhesive, it meant that I did actually have to put a backing on, which is what I was trying to avoid the whole time. So I ended up buying some cheap fabric and I cut that out as well to the size of the rug, and I folded over the edges and stuck that down too. Once again, do as I say, not as I do. Don't use a thin fabric like I did. Just use a foam and cut it to the exact size you need, because the foam does not need to be finished at the edges the way the fabric does, which means you don't have to do the rolling over thing, and it will just come out looking a whole lot neater. I will be the first to say the back of my rug is not the nicest, but it does the job. Anyway, with that done, the rug was finished. For me personally, I am super happy with the final result. I think the design transferred beautifully. It's almost perfect. There are definitely flaws in it, but I think those are simply just for the fact that it was my first rug. This little guy is going to live very happily next to his big little brother in my bedroom, and I'm super happy with the result. If you're bored at home during COVID, this is definitely a really fun project that you could do, and it doesn't cost too much. I'm definitely going to be doing more of these because I have a lot more space in my house that needs a rug to fill it up, and I have other designs that I've already thought of that are BTS and TXT related. So like I said, if you'd like to see an actual tutorial on how I make a rug showing each step in detail, then let me know, because I'd love to upload that for you guys. Also, if you'd like to see more fan art from me, whether it's be things like this or drawings that I've done, then you can follow me at Magic Shop Works on Twitter and Instagram, because that's where I post my fan art, and you can get your hands on some of it too if you're interested. In the next handy video, I will probably be making something butter inspired based on this design right here. It could change, but we'll see. So if you'd like to see that, stick around. Anyway, that's the end of today's video. This has been Han from the Haniverse. Thanks for stopping by.